Honourable Opposition Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it is with great pleasure and honor that I take this privilege to address this honorable House as the leader of the opposition on this important occasion. On behalf of honorable leaders on this side of the House and the people we represent, I rise first of all to thank His Excellency, the Governor General, for the address to Parliament earlier today. Mr. Speaker, the significance of the occasion and the message delivered demands our full attention and careful thought. Our people from all corners of our nation had been watching and listening in by radio or television, and others of our citizens will read about this in the papers. An important point, Mr. Speaker, is that leaders of all three arms of our nation's government were present here today in this important occasion. I acknowledge at this juncture the attendance of the Honorable Chief Justice and eminent justices of our nation's judiciary who were here this morning. I also acknowledge the Honorable Prime Minister and Ministers of State who head the executive government. Members of the diplomatic community who have been with us as well in this ceremony are also acknowledged. Mr. Speaker, the message from the head of state is timely and challenging indeed. And I cannot help but agree with the head of state that a serious array of socio-economic challenges confront us, the leadership of our nation today. It is clear that the 11th Parliament has come at a very difficult time. In listening to the speech by the head of state, it is clear to us on this side that many of the issues we are dealing with today have lingered on for as long as our independence. And we are almost 50 years old as an independent nation. But the task of lifting our people and building a strong nation is still very challenging indeed. Our social indicators and economic performance so far describes these challenges very well. One simply looks around our region and in the Commonwealth to see how we are faring in contrast or comparison with other countries who have gained independence in the same period. The team I lead from this side of the House understand these challenges, Mr. Speaker, and are committed to do our best to help the government find and deliver the way forward for our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to state clearly as the leader of the opposition that my team is committed to protecting and promoting the interest of our people and nation. We understand that our roles does not require us to engage in gutter politics and meaningless disputes. We recognize the government's mandate to lead the executive arm and our nation's legislative programs. Our role can be constructive only if there is meaningful dialogue and cooperation on both sides of the House. Contrary to the common mistaken view, Mr. Speaker, we are not just in the opposition to oppose and oppress any government initiatives or interventions. We are here to ensure sound policy-based decisions making and adherence and compliance to the Constitution and the laws passed in this House. Mr. Speaker, leaders on this side of the House are ready to support government and Parliament's initiative through parliamentary committees and other platforms established to perform our mandated duties. We will support bipartisan collaboration on matters of national significance. But as you know, that is only possible if both sides of the House share the same spirit and commitment to work for the national interest and development goals. Mr. Speaker, on alternative policy position, I am pleased to inform you that our policy position and key interventions in different sectors were written and published widely before the national elections. We have had the response of our people and we are ready to advance our policy contributions as we proceed. But the onus is on the Prime Minister and the government to release much needed policy details so that we can, and we see a real need for the government, especially to amplify many general statements they have made so far to enable us prepare to engage in meaningful dialogue and debate. Mr. Speaker, we agree that the first challenge is to deal with the cost of living crisis now confronting us. As we gather, our people cannot, and many of our people cannot afford basic goods and services. Mr. Speaker, what is alarming is that the prices are rising, particularly in the rural areas of our country. We have pre-existing high employment figures that continues to worsen as small businesses continue to shut down and big businesses are right-sizing or scaling down operations. We are meeting here at a time when our society has become violent and is no longer peaceful. Mr. Speaker, I'm referring to the Governor General's reference to the declining state of safety and security in our communities. The challenges in law and order are not just social concerns, but directly underpin our efforts to rebuild a robust economy for our nation going into the future. We must deal with the root causes for these negative social changes. We must identify the pressures on our youths and people to turn to the ways of lawlessness and violence. Mr. Speaker, we on this side believe that the process must start by admitting that we have real problems, properly diagnosing them before we start the recovery and restoration process. This calls us to stop pretending. We must stop the blame game and we need to start working on solutions. We agree with the Prime Minister that the work is urgent and there is no time for unnecessary time-wasting rhetoric. The opposition looks forward to contribute to interventions that the Treasurer will bring to address the immediate impact of the economic crisis and a longer-term redress to position our nation to ride the storm while building a modern, resilient economy going into the future. We support interventions that will improve quality in the health and education of our people as an important agenda in this regard. But these efforts must be accompanied by well-defined interventions everywhere else. Right now, creating a conducive investment climate is a priority challenge confronting the government at all levels. Once again, we stand ready to engage with government in finding solutions to address these and other important challenges that is facing our nation. Mr. Speaker, closer to our shores, our nation and others in the Pacific have become the focus of geopolitical events and decisions that have the potential to affect us indirectly or directly in some cases. We know how issues affecting our friends and major trading partners have had an impact on our nation and can potentially influence our duty to promote the interests of our people. Mr. Speaker, in response to the Governor General's points on the 2022 national election, I have to say that we in the opposition simply agree and in fact adopt the statements by the head of state. Our recent national election has been described by some as a national shame. There is reason for this harsh conclusion, Mr. Speaker, and it reflects the frustration of our people everywhere following the recent national elections. We know the government's promises to reform the electoral system. The opposition is looking into supporting what reforms that will be brought forward, and we offer our support to this government, to the government in this area. Mr. Speaker, the opposition sees a need to undertake comprehensive review and reform as anticipated by the Constitution. The Founding Fathers did see us time in our journey when the national government must deliberately conduct review of our constitutional laws and systems and structures of the government. We have not done so over so many years, and we agree and say that it is time we do this. This will give our citizens, especially the next generation, to participate in the discussions and work of repositioning our country. It will rebuild public confidence in our systems of democracy, of governments, and in our institutions. Mr. Speaker, this is a call for national consultation and meaningful conversation with our people and important national stakeholders in search for the way forward. This is why we say that creating new ministries and amalgamating existing ones, as the Prime Minister has highlighted, will bring us closer to the goals that we have aspired to be and to achieve. If we want to increase trading in our agriculture and other primary resources, then the solution may require a combination of interventions such as structural adjustments and funding support recommended in our existing national trade policies. I use the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to reiterate my calls for policy-driven, well-defined interventions by the government so that we can move forward and we are clear and our citizens can have an idea about what we are doing and merely not ideas that is floating in the corridors that have not gone through due process. Mr. Speaker, in the governance space, we support the move to get ICAC up and running as a matter of agency. However, we would also like to see that the National Anti-Corruption Strategy that was adopted by this House in the 10th Parliament also be implemented if we are going to achieve a set of outcomes in the anticipated time. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of governance and integrity of government decision-making processes, we will push to ensure the budget of the judiciary and national parliament must not be cut by the executive arm. This practice is unconstitutional, and in fact it has started recently, and this needs to be corrected, Mr. Speaker. I will be insisting that permanent committee on bills and estimates be bipartisan and do its job independently and professionally. Necessary checks and balance on executive powers of the people now exercised by the Prime Minister and his ministers and department heads can only be scrutinized by committees in Parliament and our judiciary. Finally, in this regard, the opposition will be calling for more stringent measures into the appointment to the judiciary and constitutional official holders and other reforms in the course of time. Mr. Speaker, in the area of revenue generation, we will support government initiatives to empower revenue collection agencies like Customs and Tax Office. We will look for diagnostic initiatives in the revenue and resource sectors to identify low-hanging fruits and address gaps that allow our revenue loss. Our attention will be given to current trade facilitation challenges. We support increased funding and capacity building in trade agencies and import-related activities needs to be better mobilized to create a buffer after customs. In the agricultural front, we welcome the government's announcement to support import substitution initiatives. We encourage the government to create and allow for strategic private partnerships in the sector that will drive the agenda with a sound business approach and outcomes. The government needs to extend the desire to drive its economic diversification with strategic partnerships with those involved in the knowledge and information sector. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the opposition want to see funds for research and development across government. The commitment to e-government is fully supported by the opposition, and we stand ready to contribute to making this drive to modernize government and our society as a whole as an important foundation for our nation going into the future. Mr. Speaker, why am I highlighting all of this? I could go on with a longer list of challenges and opportunities we have as leaders in this 11th House, but I won't. My team will do that in coming sessions. I have focused my points to agree with His Excellency, the Governor General, concerning the leadership challenges that we all face today. More so to highlight the opportunity we now have to work together to make a real difference for our country. I have tried to demonstrate that you have an opposition, Mr. Speaker, an opposition team that has a position on matters highlighted and others, that we are ready to do our work and we are ready to do our part in building our country while correcting the mistakes of the past. In summary, Mr. Speaker, the People's Opposition recognizes the challenges and statement of expectation delivered by the head of state today. Your opposition team is ready and able to meet the challenges and overcome them for the sake of our people and nation. We will support motion moved in that spirit and intent. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I also thank His Excellency the head of state, the Honorable Chief Justice, and our Prime Minister, and all the leaders of our nation gathered here today. May God bless this parliament and the people of Papua New Guinea.